Today we're going to take a look at Ivan Matyushenko versus Artem Morozov. I found this match to be super interesting because it does such a good job of demonstrating the entire spectrum of arm wrestling. We see multiple moves in this match, we see the counters to counters of other moves, and it's super interesting to watch it all play out. Initially, we see Ivan trying to force the hook versus Morozov trying to prevent that from happening. Then we see Morozov switch to more of an inside move later on, and eventually he totally commits to the inside by pressing, and this works out very well for him. So firstly, let's take a look at this round where we see Ivan trying to force the hook and Morozov trying to top roll. Now, I think the scorecard got a little bit messed up when they were doing this live, so don't pay attention to the 0-1, but just looking at Ivan's setup here, we see him pushing past and trying to obtain as deep of a grip as possible. Notice how he is shoving his pinky pad past Artem Morozov's hands, and upon the go is where all of the magic happens. Now, what's going on here is Ivan is essentially baiting Morozov into top rolling into this position that we have right here. So it looks as though he's putting just a tiny bit of fingertip pressure, trying to cause Morozov to try to roll into that fingertip pressure from the back of his hand. But all of this is actually a trap. And notice how upon the go of the match, look at Ivan's elbow positioning, and you're actually going to see it slide forward right upon the go of the match. So maybe he's baiting pressure that he's simply going to try to cup and drag. But as soon as the go happens, you can see Ivan's elbow move forward. And it's very subtle. It's maybe an inch or a half an inch, but you can see it move forward. And then as soon as he gets the wrist curl in, he drags it back. And then he begins to go to work. He begins to chop down and drag to the very back of the pad. And he's able to get this pin pretty convincingly, but he's only able to do this because he is able to first set the hook, and he does this with this perfect setup where he just subtly shoots forward just a little bit, just enough to where he's no longer holding on to Artem. He's not simply trying to wrist curl him, but he's pushing past him, he's getting around him, and then and only then does he apply his side pressure all the way down to the pin pad. Now we see Artem committing even harder to the outside move, and here it looks like maybe he's just trying to slip, so we see much more success here. It's a lot more difficult for Ivan, even while moving his elbow significantly forward, as you can see there. He's still not going to get any kind of containment. He's not getting around Morozov's hand, so he doesn't have good connection to his side pressure, so he gets out of there really quickly. Now inside of straps, we see full commitment from Artem Morozov to the outside move, and from Ivan Matyushenko, we see full commitment to the inside move. And I think that Artem looks very strong here, but I think that from a technical perspective, he probably made a mistake here by bending his wrist. So notice that Ivan is unable to get what he would want in terms of actually forcing the match into the hook. He has a slight amount of bend in his wrist, but it's not enough to totally force the match into a hook. So notice what he does is he actually just drives sideways through the lower part of his palm, through the pinky pad part of his palm. And you can see it more clearly here. This whole shelf on the side of Ivan's hand right here, that is the contact point. That's the pressure point where he is applying side pressure, and he's able to simply rotate down and destroy the pronator of Artem Morozov. So Ivan is not attacking Artem's pronator with his cupping, but rather he's attacking his pronator with his side pressure, and he's only able to do that because he's in this supinated position. So I think potentially if Artem had not cupped his wrist in, if he had kept it flat, Ivan may have not been able to do this, and he might have been able to top roll him and crack that wrist back. So at this point, Morozov is actually ahead on the scorecard due to some unfortunate foul situations, but the momentum is heavily swinging in the favor of Ivan Matyushenko. So what Artem does is he totally switches everything up. Now he commits to this inside move, and we can see that he's committing to the inside move because he is moving his shoulder forward now upon the go of the match. And this works out very well for him. He's now gassed out Matyushenko a decent amount in the earlier rounds by using that outside move, and now he switches to a totally fresh move. So what this means is that the efficiency is now beginning to swing in the favor of Morozov, and you can see that now he's using all of this side pressure, and he's looking really good from here now that Ivan is just a little bit tired, that he's been gassed out a little bit. The match is stuck in the center table, but we see more down pressure from Artem Morozov. Artem Morozov is doing a better job of chopping down onto Ivan's pronator and chopping down onto his bicep, so he's incorporating more frame, more structure into the match. And if you just look at this position, you would think probably Morozov is going to last longer from here because he's using more joint, he's using more connective tissue. We do see a couple of drives from Ivan, and it is close to where he's somewhat isolating that bicep of Morozov, but he still doesn't have quite as much shoulder commitment, and eventually we see Morozov fully commit to that press, and he's able to get the pin in that lane. He just had to totally commit, bring his shoulder all the way behind, and of course from here it's all over. There's no way you're going to do anything if you're Ivan Matyushenko from that position. So now the score is 3-1 in favor of Artem Morozov. We saw Morozov open the match using an outside move. He gassed Ivan out for a couple rounds, and even though he lost those rounds, he then switched to more of an inside move, a traditional hook, and finally he commits to a fully inside move, a press. He's able to make the score 3-1, and finally in the very last round, we see Morozov press right off the go, and it works out super well for him. He's able to secure the victory 4-1, demonstrating how shoulder commitment is always going to beat more traditional inside pressure. If you get your shoulder behind in the match and you're able to isolate your opponent's bicep, they're pretty much going to have nothing from that point on. So I thought this match was super cool because I think honestly Ivan was probably stronger in the hook. So Morozov had a little bit of a strength deficit potentially to overcome, and instead of just trying to grind out the match in the hook, he overcame this deficit by using multiple moves, therefore winning the battle of efficiency.